Federal Congress takes place at the Pretoria Showgrounds today and tomorrow. Now, the two key contestants for the influential position of DA Federal Chairperson are incumbent Athol Trollip, who is the mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and Tshwane Mayor Solly Msimanga. For more on this, let's cross back to our SABC journalist who is there at the Pretoria Showgrounds, Aldrin Sampear. Once again, Aldrin, good morning to you.
Well, yes, good morning. We continue with the coverage of the DA's Federal Congress that will be taking place, as indicated, over the next 2 days. And of course, one thing that we're watching quite closely is who will be the deputy, as well as who will be the federal chairperson of the parties. You know that there are at least 3 contestants who really want that position. But right now, there's somebody who contested a position yesterday and who actually won that position. That is Uluyolo Mpiti, who is now the DA's youth leader. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's first start off with congratulations. You've indicated earlier on that it has been 6 years in the making to having this youth congress actually finally taking place.
Thank you for having me. I think we, as the DA youth, have really worked so hard to ensure that the structures are rebuilt and that we are able to really champion the genuine struggles of young people. So it really was a victory for every young member of the DA youth yesterday that we're able to elect a leadership that will lead our structures forward.
What was the problem initially? Why were you struggling to convene a congress?
I think a lot of the time we spent a lot of time trying to build structures on the ground and really trying to work with our branches and how do we integrate the DA youth into the DA. So effectively what we did was really just to rebuild those structures through branches, through constituencies, through regions and provinces, so that we have leadership, youth leadership represented in those platforms.
It's so strange that you'd have that, I guess, as the DA youth, yet the DASO seems to be doing quite well.
DASO does really well, and I think we are able through DASO to champion student issues. But the one thing that I think as a DA youth that we need to do is how do we look at not only aspects of students but young people across South Africa who are looking for young people or young leadership to really represent them and champion the issues. So I think there's a lot more work to do that the DA youth needs to make, and I think nobody knows us. So I think what we need to do now is really just speak to what young people are saying, represent those views and reflect those views in what we stand for and what we believe in.
Would you be able to take us through some of the resolutions that you guys have taken yesterday? Is there, for instance, a quota that you love to see to have more young people represented in the top structures of the party, whether it is in Parliament? I know, for instance, in Parliament you have one of the youngest parliamentarians who is a DA member.
Well, we had a number of motions yesterday. There was one that referred to a driver's license where we are championing young people who want to get a job, but unfortunately can't get a job because they don't have a driver's license. And what we are saying is that in DA-led governments, we must ensure that young people are able to get those driver's license. Let it not be a requisite for a young person to receive a job because they need a driver's license. So that is just one of the many things that we looked at. Of course, we had a lengthy discussion on racism, xenophobia and human trafficking, which are huge issues that are starting to happen in our country. So we need to be able to have a stance on that and positions on how we want to move forward on that issue.
Actually, one of the resolutions that will be debated during Congress is also a job seekers fund. I think the amount that has been set is 150 Rand. Is this something as the DA youth that you welcome? Do you think that this is enough?
It's not enough, but it's a start. I think what we want to do as the DA youth is to really put it to the private sector that they have a responsibility to ensure the direction of this country is led through the youth. So we cannot incentivize the private sector anymore to ensure that there's jobs for young people. We need to demand it. And I think that's where the DA youth is heading, to say that if we want our country to move forward, the private sector needs to come on board to say young people must get jobs, young people must be capacitated, because we are the future of this country.
And how do you do that? How do you ensure that that the corporate sector does come to the party? Because already as it stands, with the ANC-led government, you have the tax breaks that are there for companies that employ young people. For instance, in the city of Cape Town, the mayor there, they've adopted the city bus transit system, which allows job seekers to get on the bus for free to go and look for work. How do you ensure then that the corporate sector also comes to the party?
I think it begins with an understanding from the private sector to really say that, if we want to take our country forward, private sector is making over billions of rands per annum, yearly. And I think if they have an understanding that if young people are not employed in this country, we're going to have a real problem. So I think what we want to champion is a simple demand to say that the private sector must ensure that they take up and become partners with young people in this country to ensure that young people have jobs. So that is our main aim. There are many other campaigns, of course, like the tax youth incentive that government has implemented, but that is not enough. I think we need to hold the private sector accountable, because government cannot only be the driver of jobs.
What do you make of a proposal, for instance, to increase the current corporate tax from the level that it is at the moment? And of course there has been a debate. For instance, your party has said that the 1% increase on VAT must be rejected. I believe that you guys as the DA Youth probably have taken a similar stance, but some are saying that the money must be coming from somewhere and that money should be coming from the corporate sector, whereas the mother body itself, the DA mother body, doesn't seem to be so keen on pushing for a resolution like that.
I think the increase in VAT is something that will hit the most poorest of our people in this country the hardest. And I think that's one of the things that the DA Youth has had a strong stance on, and to say that young people are going to be affected by this. The poorest families are going to be affected by this. So we don't support it and we don't believe in it. However, we do think that more interventions can be looked at. How can we generate revenue in this country? How do we look at different means in which we can help young people to really be part of this country?
Corporate tax, increasing corporate tax, that's an avenue that's available.
Well, part of the demand that we need to look at, and this is what we need to define as the DA Youth, is when we say we demand the private sector to come into partnership with young people, what are the means in which we'll look at that? And I think corporate tax is one of the aspects that one would need to be able to explore, to say if the private sector comes and becomes partners with the youth, those are the things that we need to be looking at.
Thank you so much for your time there from the DA Youth leader. We've come to the end of this particular morning segment of the coverage of the DA's Federal Congress, which will be starting a bit later on. I see that a number of DA members as well as supporters have arrived here at the Showgrounds. We had councillors also who were introduced earlier on as well. And then round about 9:30, that's when the formal proceedings will begin. And we'll be having live coverage of the formal proceedings here on SABC 404 as well as on SABC 2. And my colleague in Tshwane will be joining me for discussions around the DA's Federal Congress. So you can join us around then, around about 9:30, when we continue with the coverage of the DA's Federal Congress. It's goodbye for now.
Because the only party that can take